Hello and welcome to another episode of Black Girls Do Have Amazing Superpowers with your girl Paula Marie. Let me ask you something. What's your superpower? Hey, did you hit that subscribe button? Because I'm going to need you to hit that before we get started. Go on over, hit it. Hello, hello, hello. It is your girl, Paula Marie, and this is another episode of Black Girls Do Have Amazing Superpowers. Today is a special broadcast because we have a collaboration of guests here today, and I want to introduce them because the topic is not really about what Black girls do, but it's about what we all can do to make sure that we are really fighting the good fight for Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, because we have to have those conversations, right? And so I pulled together some amazing people from all over the world, actually. I'm so excited today. So I'm going to introduce Davita Paul. Davita Paul is from LA. Davita, say some things to the folks. Let them know a little bit of something about you.
About me, well, I'm a movement educator. I teach Pilates and I work with orthopedic rehabilitation, and I just try to help people feel better in their own bodies and vibrant lives, capable lives, strong and happy.
Good deal. And Therese Solon, did I say that last name right?
Yes, it's completely different in Swedish, but in English, that's perfect.
Okay. Well, Therese is in Amsterdam, okay? And tell me how you say it in Sweden. Tell me how you say your name.
Therese Salin.
Oh, say it one more time, girl. Say it one more time.
Therese Salin.
Okay. I like that. Tell the people a little bit about yourself, Therese.
Yeah, so I am a dancer from the hip hop dancehall genres, and I teach, I perform. I've been having several crews, and now I'm based in Amsterdam as a project manager, dancer, and also now a podcaster. So I'm happy
Oh,
to be here. Yeah.
fellow podcaster. Thank you so much. And then we have Helen. Is it Phelan?
Phelan.
Phelan. I should have practiced these names before.
That's okay.
Helen Phelan is from Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn is in his house.
Yes.
How you doing, Helen? How are you?
I'm doing well today. I'm also a Pilates instructor, and my specific lens or approach towards movement is about prioritizing how you feel doing movement and finding joy in movement versus changing your body to fit into diet culture's beauty ideal.
Okay. All right. And Uni's like shaking her head like, yeah, all of that, all of that. So you miss Uni B. Uni, is it Bisseret?
Yes. Oh, you got it. Good job.
Yeah, well, Therese had me roll my R's a little bit, so my mouth got warmed up. I could articulate a little bit from my theater training back in the day. Uni, tell the people who you are, what you're about, who you be.
I'm Uni, and I am also from New York in Harlem. I am a Pilates instructor. My business is called Uni B Pilates, and I teach online virtual sessions, privates, and small classes. My focus is on educational and technical in detail while bringing my personality to each session. So even though I do focus heavily on form and people understand their bodies, I like to make people laugh. I love people to enjoy their Pilates sessions just like how Helen is. So yeah, that's pretty much what my introduction is.
Alrighty. So we have a diverse crew. We're from all over the world. And for the podcasters, just FYI, Uni B and myself are African American. Okay. The other guests are not non-African American. So I wanted to have a conversation, and we're all in the fitness field. We're all in the people touching business, healing, body movement field, right? But this conversation isn't about that. That's for another time. So I'll bring all these beautiful voices and faces together for another episode. But this episode, because I pulled it together real quick, like quick, in a hurry for you, and I reached out to people that were accessible to me, is I want to have a conversation about how we can come together and put together some solutions or shift, a mind shift in how we're thinking. How can we help our allies help us more? understand us more? How can we articulate some of the things they do that may rub us the wrong way? Or maybe we just don't know the why. And so this is a conversation of understanding the why, because if you don't understand the why, then you can't grow from it. So I cyber stalked some of you. Let me go into my phone. I cyber stalked you. Okay. So Davita inboxed me. So that was a whole different conversation. But Davita inboxed me and she just wanted to get more information. She wanted to understand or find a space where we could collaborate. And that's how we initially met. So she reached out to me, just so let me say that one more time. She reached out to me. I didn't reach out to her. Okay. So let that be lesson number one for all of us, is that we all have to do a little bit of reaching so that we can meet each other halfway. I don't know if that was a word somebody needed to hear today. I just said it. So take it, pick it up if you need it. If you don't, flush it off and keep it moving. So Davita, this is what you posted a few days ago. Davita states in her post on Instagram, "This past week has been a whirlwind of chaos, fear, strength, and humanity. Such opposing moments of despair, along with uplifting hope. Everything is cyclical. Everything moves in cycles of tension and release. And from that, we can create change and movement. Last week, I was wondering if I shouldn't teach my classes. I was wondering if my teaching was trivial in this moment with so much going on, or worse, even harmful to pretend things were normal." That's half the post. I'm not going to read it all. But I read it and I said, wow. Can you tell me a little bit about how you were feeling in terms of thinking that moving on with your day-to-day, how it would have been reflected, Davita?
Well, I'm doing a lot of teaching right now virtually, as you know, we can't really connect in the real world right now, um, and I was just seeing everything happening, and I couldn't be part of the boots on the ground. I wasn't comfortable being in the protest just because of the virus going on. I have family members that are, at risk. So I wanted to figure out, how can I be part of this, keep this momentum going without being that physical presence that's really that good pressure politically to get things moving. And so I was just worrying that if I'm just at home doing my normal thing, am I not helping anything progress? I'm not helping anything push this momentum for the allies, for our Black friends, I'm just going on my day to day.
Right.
And eventually there's going to be less protest, there's less constant of this. And so eventually the news feeds go back to normal. And I didn't want to allow that to happen so quickly in my own world. So I was just thinking, if I'm just going to keep teaching normally this week, I'm not really doing justice to this like grand peak of movement that's happening in the world. So I was worried that just by going back to that, it's like, I'm not helping, I'm not doing anything. So I was doing a lot of research and talking to my friends and reading and just listening to what other people were saying, mainly other Black voices, and how they were feeling and what they were saying. And I realized that movement classes are still really important. We connect through movement. If we can help our bodies feel strong, we can help ourselves feel strong, and maybe that can give more like strength and power. So I kept teaching, but I made sure to talk with each of my clients about what was going on and see where each of them were, just to kind of bring that into my normal schedule for the week.
So you actually felt comfortable having a conversation with your clients about the Black Lives Matter movement?
Most of them. I am close with, I teach all privates or double session, like two or one people. So I'm not in a huge group of people that I don't know very well. So, and I've been teaching most of these people for many years. So I pretty much know where everybody stands. So for myself, we're all in a very similar mindset. So none of the conversations were too out of the ordinary. Now I have one couple that I teach who is extremely conservative. They're Trump supporters. They don't think that this is a racial issue. They think it's economic. There's all these things that I've been trying to listen to them to see where that type of mindset is, so I can maybe figure out how to help that person come around a little bit. Not easy. It's not easy to listen to that, but I find it educational. So besides that client, I was pretty comfortable talking with my other clients about things.
Okay. All right. So Helen, tell me about your vibe in New York, because New York has pretty much been like the epicenter of, or the focal point of COVID-19. And now it was a lot of rioting and not rioting, but protesting with the Black Lives Matter movement and against racial inequality. So how has that world been for you? How has your space been?
Well, I agree that movement is more important than ever, and getting people to feel, supported enough to get out there and do that work. And a few weeks ago, when this first started coming up in the news, I was also really apprehensive about going out into the streets because I felt, I wasn't sure if it would be safe. And my partner is not American, doesn't have a green card. I was worried that if we go together, he'll end up getting deported. We can't afford for that to go on right now. But we started going to McCarran Park, this park in my neighborhood. It's having a vigil every night. And that was a very good sort of gateway into the physical aspect of this, just because it was, very distant. There was actually no police presence there at all. And again, Williamsburg, where I live, happens to be a super white neighborhood. So that explains that. But then I, got the confidence to go to some of the marches. And this past Sunday, we went to the Brooklyn Museum and did the March for Black Trans Lives. And I feel like the energy has shifted so much, in that there's still so much, and I can't speak for Black people, of course, still so much grief and sadness in the air. But this past weekend, it felt like a more empowered or hopeful energy layered on top of that, versus a few weeks ago, it felt very, at least the way that I was experiencing it, it felt very hopeless and just overwhelming, especially because it was really my wake-up call to a lot of stuff that I thought as a liberal I was aware of, but really was not.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Some of the things that you thought you were aware of, but maybe not so much?
It's more of an overall realization that I was very complacent and complicit in a lot of ways, and that I vote Democratic every single time, but I never took a second to look at what the systems in place that were keeping this inequality going. Right. And I felt that because I was raised to not really be comfortable talking about race, as if the word Black was a bad word. And it has been something that I've really made an effort to step into the last few weeks, especially with my white girlfriends. We have a book club. I know there's a lot of people saying that book clubs aren't enough. That's not all I'm doing, but I think it has been really interesting, especially with this. It's the girls that I went to college with. I was in a sorority in the South, and we're doing the book club on How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. And it has been very interesting seeing women, I should say, we never once talked about race because it never came up right in our world. And now we're all having all of these realizations about the ways that we've benefited without realizing that we were benefiting, or the ways that we've added harm. And there's definitely been a grief accompanied by realizing like how harmful you are when your self-identity is like, oh, I'm a good person. I'm a healer. I care about people. So I've just been really working to hold both of those feelings at the same time. Like, how do I move forward and do better, and just sit with the discomfort of knowing that I've, can I curse, messed up in the past.
Right. So, Uni, do you feel like it's fair or honest for Helen to feel like maybe she messed up or she didn't do enough? Or because for me as a Black woman, I think you don't know until you know. So I don't come from a space where you should know. Like, we just don't all know all things. And we all come from our circumstances, our experiences, and how we were raised. Like, I'm a Southern girl. I'm from North Carolina. So I was raised a specific type of way. But to be honest, I was raised in a bubble. I did not really feel racism until I became an adult. My family and my community, I guess, shielded me, and I was always very confident, very comfortable. So you don't know until you know it, and you don't know it until you feel it. And I don't know if it's okay, Helen, for you to take on that weight, all that weight, and say, I messed up, because you didn't know. So what you think, Uni? How you feeling?
I came from the same bubble as well. I was around diversity, and I didn't experience racism until I became a Pilates instructor, or not even just a Pilates instructor, industry that's more white dominant. But so that side of, I didn't know either, but once I started to see it, and then as folks, I started to listen to people, and I'm like, she's saying the same thing, she's saying the same thing, she's saying the same thing. I'm missing something here. So I had to figure it out. I had to ask the questions, and then I started to do my own little homework, and I'm like, oh, what they're saying is right. So then I had to just pay attention more and listen, because for a long time I thought like, maybe that's not something, it's not a race thing. Maybe it's just that person didn't know. Right. But I've been on that side where I didn't know as well. So to put that, it is a lot on yourself to feel that, wow, how can I not see the most basic things? Because as Black folks, we're like, how can you not see a human being killed is a bad thing, So it's like, it's a weird lens. It's a very weird lens. But I'm just happy that people are starting to see it. And I'm telling folks that you're going to make the mistakes, but that's the only way you're going to learn. Yeah. And don't be fearful of those mistakes, because if you don't, it's like being just a Pilates instructor. You had to make the mistakes when you work with clients, right? If you didn't figure out how to do certain exercises with that client, then you're just like, the client will never progress, because you never took that step to, okay, it doesn't work. Let's try this, figure this out in another way. So with Helen, I don't feel upset that that burden of like, wow, I just didn't think about it, or just like, look, that's in the past now. We're here now. Let's see what you're going to do now from now to the future. That's what I care about, not what happened in the past. The past is very important to understand, so we don't repeat the same things over again. But I always tell people, this is the time to start. I'm going to be watching you from the time you start to the future. That's where I care about more. So.
Got it. So, Therese, did I roll my R's right on that?
You're doing great.
I'll try it. So, in Amsterdam, what does it look like? What does it feel like there? Like, because people were closed down, shut down for COVID, but people were also in the reopening phase in waves. So different areas were experiencing different things. When you saw the 8.5 minutes of George Floyd being killed, what was the feeling or the vibe in Amsterdam?
Yeah, where to begin, right? Amsterdam is probably the most diverse place in the Netherlands. It has more than 180 different nationalities. And when I moved here, it was because one of the reasons was because of the diversity that I missed back home.
Okay.
And live. I think that when it all happened, like every time we see news, you know, the first thing that comes up is, you know, how do we deal with racism here? And I don't know if you all know about the Black Pete tradition in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I
Yeah,
do.
so of course.
Oh, well, can you
That
explain it for us, please, so that
Yeah.
our viewers can understand that?
Yes. So before Christmas, there's the tradition here, which is Saint Nicholas, which is like he looks like a bishop, and basically he comes with gifts to the children. But it has been a thing now for many, many years that next to him he has a little helper that, you know, some people say, oh, you know, he's just covered in ash, and that's why he looks like this. But it's also, you know, if you look at history, he's wearing certain clothes that is represented for when you are owned by somebody. So there's the misconception of just being a little bit of ashy turning into people doing complete black faces, and it's still very, very present. So before Christmas, there is like parades with the Saint Nicholas, and a lot of people, both grown-ups and children, being white and doing black faces and in walking in these parades. And conservatives in the Netherlands are very, very, you know, this is our tradition. It's been forever and ever and ever. You cannot take it out from history. You cannot change it. And of course, this hurts a lot of people in this country. And that is, of course, also something that came up in the demonstrations, like, let's please just end this now. Because, you know, for Black children and people of color here that grows up with these traditions, it's very hurtful. And there's a lot of white Dutch people that they don't understand. They don't want to see that. So I think that this issues comes up also every time. And yeah, so the feeling of the Amsterdam community right now is, you know, here we go again, and let's fight for what we're seeing in the States, but also let's fight on a world level, and let's fight on a local level. And so yeah, that I would say is the feeling over here.
You know, I feel great knowing that the whole entire world is doing things in solidarity, because it's always felt like it's just been our fight. Like, it's always been Black people's fight. Nobody really sees it. Nobody really understands it. And you feel like that, Uni?
Yeah, that's why I was so happy to see it's not just happening in Minnesota. It's not just happening in certain parts of the states. It's all 50 states. It's the whole world. Even seeing statues that were represented for these people who do these massacres and genocide. It's amazing how, like, everyone is really starting to see it. My experience was similar to what Therese, I hope I'm saying that right. I went to Barcelona, and I was going to this Black Girl Pilates conference in Barcelona, and one of the ladies lived there, and I told her, like, why is Christopher Columbus in the middle of this park? And they said, because how people do, you know, Christopher Columbus is a hero.
Say that again, Uni.
In the
We're
United
having
States.
a little bit of feedback. So the last thing we heard was, why is Christopher Columbus statue here? That's the last piece we heard.
So yes, why is
oh no.
So we'll come back to Uni so she can finish that thought. And
there you go. Okay, got the Wi-Fi back on. All right. So I asked, why is Christopher Columbus in the middle of the park? But in Spain, they see Columbus as a hero. even though in the States, we don't see Columbus as a hero. We see him as what he is.
Right.
And I had to, even though it felt, basically it's kind of like trauma. I'm like, I don't like it that he's there. But I can't say, hey, Spaniards, you can't have the statue there because this is their home. This is how they view it, and I have to respect that. I just wish that they could understand that, hey, this guy that you adore did a lot of horrible things in America.
Right.
So it's just like seeing those statues, seeing the black faces. It is very traumatic, but it's just like we can't get upset because I'm the only one that's getting upset while everyone's celebrating.
Right.
So I just have to deal with the trauma and just like, okay, I'm just going to keep going. So now I'm just really happy to see, okay, this is not right. We should take out the black faces. We should take out these statues.
Right. I feel differently. I'm going to put a different
stuff that I have read.
Yeah, I'm going to put a different spin on it. So I feel like, yes, we should definitely start to look at what we're celebrating and not be afraid to correct history, because there's a lot of misconceptions with what we know in history. So if you think about Christopher Columbus, for example, like we all know, well, maybe we don't know. What I've learned in the world is that, no, he did not discover America. No. So, that's what I learned in the world. So let me say that before, I get jumped on by someone who's like, yes, he did. Okay, what I learned was something different. I don't know if we continue to celebrate that once we know that we got history wrong or history is inaccurate. And I don't know if we don't, in Virginia, because I'm in the DMV, which is slang for DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I live in Maryland. I work in Virginia. I party in DC. So I am all over. I may hit all three in one day. They are taking statues down left and right in the state of Virginia for Confederate art that is just resurrected in these government federal locations, right? I do feel like, for the most part, we should not have these places where our tax dollars are paying for them. However, the other contributions that they have given us should definitely be recognized. So I do support placing them in strategic places where if there are people that want to still know that piece of history, they have the right to do it. I just don't want to see it when I go to pay my property taxes. So I'm always trying to figure it out, like for both sides, because it can't always be my way, right? So you can't take down somebody's great accomplishments because of the like devastating things that they do. We're seeing it done left and right, and people are being erased from our history because of it. So I just have a different perspective on it. So I wanted to jump in. Who wants to? Oh, Therese. Girl, I stalked you too. Let me see. Oh, actually, it was Helen. This is from Helen. Helen posted, white women have the Black and queer communities to thank for the body positive movement. Something I've done a shit job of articulating to you thus far because I didn't feel confident discussing it, but will do better of from now on. I'm gonna stop right there. It's a lot more to that post, but I want you to touch on the fact that you didn't feel confident enough to speak on it, because I think we need to understand why our allies aren't confident or comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, now this has become, a dirty phrase, and I understand why, but I was raised that it was not polite to talk about race, and that you don't see color. If you are a loving person, you don't see color. Now I realize that people who don't see color are they don't have the ability to see when certain communities are being targeted or brutalized if you can't see the difference.
That part.
Yeah, but I think it was good intentions on my parents' part, like trying to raise me to be a loving person, but their own age and cultural upbringings, limitations, not having the words to put it in a different way. So like I said before, something that has really been like maybe my biggest takeaway so far has been getting comfortable talking about it, and the fact that we can acknowledge that we are all different. It just doesn't mean anything based about our worth, and that it shouldn't be a scary thing to acknowledge that there's differences between us, whether it's sexuality, gender identity, race, body abilities. There's so many ways that make us feel other in society, and also that can make us feel like we have community within our society. And I think that if we lean into thinking of it as a way of looking at community, it will make people more comfortable talking about it.
Okay, I get with that. So we're going to take a break and come back really quickly. I'm so digging this conversation. Hey, we are back. It's your girl, Paula Marie, and we are going to dive into the question of what our allies can do to shift. I always like to say the word shift because change is too abrupt. I feel like when change doesn't happen, we become upset, devastated, complacent, angry. And so I think change happens in shifts. And so I'm going to ask our allies, what little shifts are they realizing that they can include in their day to day to help push and propel the Black Lives Matter movement? Helen, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think empathy, and especially when I think about the way that I talk about this with my conservative family. And I think a lot of people who can't get on board with the movement this can't seem to process that it's not negating other people's pain, or not negating the struggles that people who have a different sliver of like the other puzzle, is how I've been describing it, whether you're poor or queer or non-binary, whatever it is that makes you feel not like a straight white man, a rich straight white man. It can be hard for, I think, and in myself a lot of the time too, to put yourself in a position of thinking like, oh, like I still have privilege because I'm white. And so I think like stepping out wider.
Oop, there's a pause in my Wi-Fi. So hopefully we'll get that back. Hey. So we had some Wi-Fi issues that disconnected the interview. And when we start back, it's going to be in the middle of their conversation. The ladies just kept going. So I thought it was really great that the connectivity of this group was so strong. Here's the rest of the interview.
We have to kind of find those different ways to speak to different people and connect on a humanity level, right? Person to person on some level.
I think that is so right. I feel like, when you're realizing, for example, that you are also able to raise your parents, and that shift from like they don't know it all until like you're like, but wait a second, that's not true. That's not true. My father was born 1945. That's when the Second World War ended. I'm supposed to be his grandchild, so we are 2 generations away from each other. And that was like, I have been spending so many years raising him, in these things, because he didn't grow up in a time or a place where he could have friends that look different from him. And I'm blessed to be in the generation where I can have that, and that is a natural part of my everyday life. So yeah, definitely, like, how do you talk with somebody that have been spending their entire years raising you, and suddenly you have to start raising them back? And at the same time, isn't that the biggest gift we can give our parents, is to like, how can I challenge your mind from the new generation's perspective. But it can be quite a handful. Yeah.
I think it goes back to what Helen was saying before the internet cut us off, is that the empathy and compassion has to be there, because there are a lot of generational, cultural layers to this thing, and you only know from your perspective and your particular situation or layer of it. So with my mom, I have to, she gets it, but she's that typical Southern Black lady. So she's not as fiery as me. I don't know where I got that from, but she's that typical like Southern belle mother. And so she won't like rock the boat. But she'll support it, but she won't actively rock the boat. And so it's, I have to empathize with her, because that's how she was raised, and that's what makes her feel safe, and it's gotten her to 70, to almost 70 years old. And so I have to respect that, even though I do want her to push a little bit more. I can't push her, because they shut down when you do that. It's like children.
Yeah, that's what Paula, that's what we're just, you're gonna see this recording anyway. But we were talking about that, you know, how she has to talk to her parents, and it's like with certain folks, it's like children. There's some children that you can just yell at them and they'll listen. And there's some children like, you know what, they're not that great with yelling. I have to actually talk to them. So you have to maneuver and find out what is the best way that you can give the information. And also like questioning them. Like if they say this is a certain way, I'm like, well, what about this information? And that is going to change their way to think, because you can't go against facts.
Right. Yeah. So is anyone else a mother on the panel today? Because I'm a mom. No, but let me tell you about, let me tell y'all, okay? For a mother that has a Black boy, I had a really deep conversation. I'm going to try my best to have a separate interview with him and his friends, because he dropped so much knowledge on me in that phone conversation. I was trying to figure out how to record the conversation. It was so deep. But there is not just a George Floyd face on it, you know, or that's just the face of the moment. There's a Uni face to it. There's a Paula face to it. There's a Franklin face to it, which is my 15-year-old. We all have our own stories of how we have to code switch, so to speak. And he went into detail about at 15 how he has to code switch slightly when he's out, when he's, you know, in a store, when he's at school. And so in his 15-year-old world, this is very present for him.
You know,
Go ahead, Uni.
you know what? I think with code switching is a thing that we have to do to survive, right? Because we don't want people to become uncomfortable. If we don't want to fit into the stereotypes, I totally agree with that. But I think at a certain point, code switching can now hurt us, because now we're allowing people to say ignorant stuff, or we're allowing folks to say because we just keep ourselves quiet because we do not want to be put in certain situation. That's why it keeps going. And now, because now we're speaking out, people are like, whoa, what, oh, did I say something wrong? And because everyone's now pausing, and what happened?
I said they're not used to it.
They're not used to it.
Yeah.
But it's like us staying silent now, it's going to hurt us now, because then I can't be next to a person if someone says something that's going to, it's anything, like just in general. Like if someone says you're ugly, you're going to say, no, I'm not. Get out of here. Like, so in a way that we have to eventually stop. There are moments when we do have to code switch, and there are moments when we don't. But I think a lot of it, we have to stop, because then how are they going to learn if we never say anything?
Yeah. And I never had a conversation with him about this. He told me that this was his experience and a decision he made, that he had to move through his space of his world that way. So our allies have to code switch as well. Like,
Right.
'cause we never talked about that. So Davita's shaking her head, girl. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I only actually learned this term a year ago. And I've known of the idea of it for so long, but I never actually knew the term. Paula, when you said on your message to me, you said something about code switching and how do our allies have to, I was like, oh my God, like I'd never thought of it in terms of how I am doing. I've only known it in terms of what you guys are talking about in terms of the Black community and switching in that way. And I was like, wow. And I was thinking back to, I went to Ghana about 10 years ago this summer, actually. I went to Ghana with a group of my dancers. We were doing like a dance collaboration. And thinking back to it, I was aware of how I was speaking differently with different people in terms of like my tone and like how I was speaking. And I was aware of it at the time. I didn't quite understand it. And then when I started thinking about that term of code switching, it's like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And I think part of it is for myself, I also do it with other white people where I kind of change how I'm speaking depending on who I'm with. But it's definitely more prevalent in terms of different cultures, like a different culture speaking to a different person. And it's interesting because I think of it as like I'm trying to be compassionate, like maybe unconsciously, like compassionate to this other person and make them feel more comfortable. Because like, look, we're the same, or I understand how you're speaking. I'm going to speak in the same way. But I think that can also be harmful if we're not aware of it.
Right.
And making somebody wrong for sounding a certain way, even if we're not intending to. So it just, yeah, just hear, like when Paula, when you said that about the allies code switching, I was like, wow, that's fascinating.
Well,
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out how to make this conversation fair. And if I were an ally, I think I absolutely would be code switching to some degree because I think we all do it. I don't think it's a racial or cultural like term. I think everybody can own that term, right? But since Therese, you said, I like saying your name. You said that there's such diversity in Amsterdam, right? So if with so much diversity, is there still code switching, or is everybody just authentically who they are because there's so much color and flavor around?
No, I also think it's completely about who you hang out with. Like we can live in cities and don't mix at all because we are with the same type of people. It's about based on interest. Are you expats? Are you local? It's all about that. So I must say, like, I have a very maybe one-sided view of this because I hang out with a lot of expats since I am one of them myself. And since I'm a dancer, which is already so, naturally, like we meet for salsa, we meet for couple dance or hip hop competitions, do we ever think about who we're meeting? No, you dance the style that you are at. And as soon as you get out of it, you're like, oh, like the academy. I work also in projects at the academy for theater and arts. And here we go again. Like, oh, they are still, fighting to get more diversity into the academy. So yeah, like you have all these amazing artists and people moving around in the cities, but we are all in our own disciplines and our own bubbles. And then you have the institutions again, or the politics that again is maybe majority white of the teachers in the academy. And it's and then you realize, oh, okay, it's not a fight that is over. It's still, we're still there, that we're trying to make everyone represented in the institution levels. So yeah, it's the diversity in the city is also if you are hanging out with that, and if you are interested in that. But I also think that there's a lot of Amsterdam people that maybe only hang out with their own.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I
So
think,
Uni,
sorry.
oh,
I was
Helen,
just
go
going to
ahead.
say,
Go ahead.
I think that like this idea of context is so interesting. Myself also just coming from the dance world. The first time someone on Facebook, just to back this up, posted the other day saying like, when was the first time you came across a Black teacher? And
Ooh, yeah, I saw that.
I only had one Black teacher in like regular school my entire life. It was my 7th grade social studies teacher. But at dance, again, I didn't have this teacher until I think it was 5th grade, my hip hop teacher. But then I consistently, for jazz or hip hop, the rest of my life, it was usually a Black male artist who was the instructor. And when I got, very serious about going into dance as a profession, I did a bunch of summer intensives with Complexions Contemporary Ballet, which it's kind of like hilarious how removed I was at the time, because the name is literally Complexions and the whole mission of the company is to introduce more diversity into the contemporary ballet world. But at the time I was just like, this is the best choreography. I want to be dancing with these dancers. And it never even occurred to me that like in that space was the only time I really saw Black ballet dancers, until this is before Misty Copeland was like a household name. And then outside of that space, it was business as usual. Every ballet class I was in was white girls. And I started thinking about this after someone posted that on Facebook, that I was like so driven to be part of this company. And it never occurred to me that like that was
The mission.
yeah.
But it's okay, because in that moment, Helen, you didn't see color. You just had a mission. Okay.
Yikes.
So, and we can laugh about it in that context because you're an ally. So yeah, and it's all good. There's no mistakes in how you move. It's just you learn from how you move. So I don't think that everything has to be like a mission either. Like that's the other thing I want my son to know, is that everything isn't a mission. Like us just being is a mission. Okay. So I'm a Black mom. I am a mission. Every time I take a step, I breathe and I speak. Same as Uni, same as any Black person, we are the mission, right? And so there are layers in it. There's layers in your bubble. There's layers, like as Therese was saying, in the company where there isn't a lot of diversity. But there's also layers as mothers that we have to fight for our boys to make sure that they're treated fairly inside of the school system, and that they're leveling up at the rate that they should be according to their skills, and not leveling down because of the systematic issues that lie there. Like every space you go in, there's an issue, right? There's a fight. So it's not just, this global Black Lives Matter. That's like the bubble, right? But then inside the bubble, there's all these, I think, intersecting missions that we all could be fighting.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I attacked the Pilates community, because I was just like, wow, that was my version of protesting, because I couldn't protest because I can't just handle big crowds. That's just, my brain doesn't work like that. But I'm like, how is my way of protesting? And yes, I can do the petitions and I can sign and I can donate and stuff like that, but I feel like I could do more. And I'm like, wait, I can. I'm a Pilates instructor. There's issues here. This is our domain, right? I'm not a yoga instructor. I can't go to a yoga community and say, hey, there's issues there too, but I can do it to Pilates. And that's why I started going after these platforms, because again, we have issues everywhere. Right. And it's not just cops killing Black people. It's the system, it's the education, it's literally everywhere. So we have to dismantle even the smaller pieces, like why does that studio have a picture of 10 white ladies and only one Black girl, and the Black girl has my skin color?
Yeah, why is it your skin color, Uni, and not my skin color? Like,
because
ask them that.
So here the thing is, so there was this information about that they were called people blue veins. So or the paper bag, right? So if you look like the paper bag, or you can still see the coloring of your veins or your skin, technically you can pass as a person to walk around with the white folks. right?
Wow.
That's literally it.
I can see my vein.
So that's just
So
like another.
that's not an accurate way to read if you're going to be
No,
racist.
it's not. It's not. It's not at all. But it's just sad. And like, I had a friend who told me that why is the reason why you're getting all this like exposure? And I said, I think because you have the privilege too of being lighter, right? And I'm just like, yeah, you know what? I didn't think about what happened if I was much darker. Would I have the same exposure? That's like another question. It's like, because do white folks feel that because I'm closer to their skin color that they're able to talk to me? And I'm like, no, I think it's also my personality because I'm a very open person, but I'll let you know if you're being a bad person. But that's also another.
Is that a dog?
I hope
Well, let's get into it though. We have some others here, so let's get into it. Davita, I think I was just about to call you, girl. He can bark. Let the dog bark. So, Davita, do you think that just a different perspective, uni may be getting some exposure because of the complexion? Maybe uni is getting more than maybe I would get if we were in the same platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring that up because I was reading some of the posts that I was reading the other day. They were talking about that, where they were saying like white passing, they're passing.
Yes.
And I was just like, wow, that's a whole nother level of racism and exclusion or privilege. And so then I'm seeing like, okay, well, there's this whole other level of like, if like one of my colleagues who is a lighter toned Black woman, and then she might then have this struggle of she's white passing, but not quite enough for white people. And then she's also being judged by maybe, some of her Black friends who are much darker complexion than her because she's not quote Black enough. And so there's this whole other struggle that is just like mind-opening to realize there's so many levels to this for us to be aware of and try to help support. And I think that part of it, I don't know if I, as a white ally, if I can help much within that, because as my husband is Taiwanese descent, and he says the same thing within the Asian community. There's a lot of levels of racism there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I can't help much with that because I am, a white spouse. And so I think that's more with, maybe this could be ignorant, but maybe within the community that's where the levels of that need to be addressed. But just as an ally to understand those other levels of racism.
And that layer, there's some sadly again don't like being around Black people because the way how they're much louder or how we are passionate or stuff like that. That's just like other pieces that I tell my friends or my white friends that we have our own healing to do. And I'm saying that at the time when the George Floyd was happening with the protests, it was very human.
Yeah. No, but I think that as a white person, I think that the biggest lesson I've learned, especially through this time, have been to listen. So one of my best friends here, she's mixed race, and she is now also pregnant with with also a mixed race man. So like we're talking about how she sometimes feel maybe she missed some things out because she was raised by a white mother. And I need to hear this because my life partner is Black. He's East African, and I will hopefully, if I'm blessed enough, become a mother to also a child that neither me or him have had the same life experience as. And so these conversations are so important for me too, not just to hear like Black and white, but to hear the interracials and the things that they think about, and the struggles or insights or whatever they're having. And I didn't know what type of, if you have a C curl or a B curl, had any difference within, the Black community. But some, talking about, oh no, but my hair
I'm a
is more.
4C. I'm a 4C, 3, so I'm a 4C.
Yeah. And these are things, that I need to hear. I need to learn. And like, listening and being open to that and sitting with that there is a difference within the community is so important. I also read something the other day, an article about Black liberals, and that was again a completely new layer into how loud, how much of a fighter, how much do we say no, and so you have also indifferences that we need to understand too, even if it's just to listen and to learn. So that's
You know,
definitely.
Therese, that's
Go ahead. We're almost at the end of the time. Go ahead, Uni.
we're also educating ourselves because we were told, right, that this is what Black people are. This is like, even when you say here 4C, right? Until I've met this other Black woman who told me it's like she doesn't go by 4C, BC, whatever the stuff. She goes by it's texture hair. Hair is hair. She goes by scientifically, hair is hair. It's just that we were told that our hair is much difficult, or that Black history started with just slavery. We have to also educate ourselves. And that's like another, even with like, my grandmother raised me as well, including my mom, and she's Puerto Rican. And the season they use is Goya, right? But in a few years back, her grandparents, their grandparents, they didn't have that. They had the stuff from the earth. But what happened was companies like Goya company decided to like, all right, let's take your culture, let's change it up, and then give it back to you. You think this is your culture. And now we have to go back. We have to go back and like unlearn this stuff. I stopped using those products because I realized like, this is what my culture is. This is what my family taught me. But I can live in a world thinking that Goya is part of my history. It's not.
Yeah.
So it's just like, that's another thing that we Black people also have to do. Like, we got to educate ourselves. And like, how can I teach you when I don't even know yet?
Right.
The African continent's history, everything, we're all learning.
It's so vast.
Relearning.
It's very vast.
Wow, that was a powerful episode of Black Girls Do podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. And a special thanks to our guests, Davita Paul, Helen Phelan, Therese Salin, and Uni Bisseret. Our sponsors for today's podcast are the Ebony Biz Diva, the Queen of Free 99, Black Girls Do Pilates too, Paula's Web, all natural skincare and hair care, and the nonprofit Paula Marie Speaks. If you're interested in being a guest on Black Girls Do podcast, contact Paula Marie at onlyonepaulamarie@gmail.com.